Pet All the Dogs collection is now available. The link is in the description below. What is up, you guys, and welcome into our awesome channel. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to see our daily entertaining videos and make sure to hit the notification button to stay tuned. In this video, the tiny dog was thrown into a lion's cage. What happened to him? Make sure to stick to the video to know what happened exactly. Everybody held their breath as they watched. Mesmerized, it was an eerie feeling as the park went completely silent. He held tightly onto the leash, waiting to see what would happen but ready for a quick reaction if things went south. Then the two pairs of eyes met and spent a few seconds sizing each other up. Finally, one of them made the first move, and what happened next was something no one could ever predicted. Only a few months before, John Wayne had no idea he'd find himself in that situation. He had just welcomed two feline cubs to his house. But these weren't your typical house cats. It was a tiger cub named Tony and a lion cub named Bondigger. You see, John takes care of rescued young wild cats at his home in Wynnewood in Oklahoma. Previously, he had also hand-reared tiger cubs called Tippy and Orlando, but this new pair was something special. John had fed Tony and Bondigger formula and raw meat, groomed them, and played with them. The two cubs, despite being different species, soon became like brothers. They loved frolicking around and play fighting with each other and also with John. Tony was the more playful of the two and sometimes got a little rough with John. But Bondigger was always there to keep his feline buddy in check, snarling at him so he wouldn't hurt John, and there was a reason for that. Bondigger was brought to John because he couldn't survive in the wild. He was born with a metabolic bone disease. This rare condition meant his bones would grow a little deformed and more brittle than those of a normal lion. Bondigger would have to live his entire life in captivity and away from bigger, stronger animals that would hurt him. Thankfully, he had found someone who understood what it's like to live with a disability, and that someone was John. Long before he started taking care of big cats, John had always lived in the wild side. One day in 1994, he went bungee jumping. The trapdoor malfunctioned and fell 55 feet to the ground. He survived but broke both his feet, his hip, and his back. The doctors told him he would never walk again. But he's a very stubborn man. Through physical therapy, he regained the use of his legs, but he kept suffering from infections and soon he received some life-changing news. Both of John's legs were amputated at the knee, but this only made his resolve grow stronger. He started taking care of young wild cats, and soon it became his passion. He developed a particularly strong bond with Bondigger, probably because they both understand what it felt like to be physically different from others. But these were big cats, after all, and unfortunately he couldn't keep them in the house forever. Luckily, there was a perfect place already waiting for them. Aside from taking care of young cats in his home, John also worked as park manager at the Great Wynnewood Exotic Animal Park. This would become Tony and Bondigger's new home, where they'd have big, grassy enclosure to roam and play. Tony was taken to meet the other tigers in the park, while Bondigger got an enclosure all to himself. But despite having a lot more room, he was not happy. Bondigger missed his play pals Tony and John, and soon he became really lonely. He would pace around the enclosure and bite all the fence, but John knew he couldn't put Bondigger with other lions or tigers as he was likely to get hurt. That said, he didn't want him to languish in his loneliness, and that's when he got an unorthodox idea. Aside from all of the wild animals in enclosure, the park was also a home to a pack of 4 Dachshunds: Abby, Milo, Bullet, and Angel. They were considered the park mascots and roamed around freely. They were extremely friendly, not just with humans but with all other animals in the park. Abby was the pack leader and the most fearless of the 4, and that gave John an idea. John put Abby on a leash and went into Bondigger's enclosure, while another keeper held onto the young lion. The two stared at each other for a few seconds, until Abby started jumping around, clearly wanting to play with Bondigger. Suddenly the lion pulled away from his keeper. It was a tense moment as neither man knew if he was about to attack Abby. But what happened next was completely unexpected. Bone Digger actually moved away from Abby, and it seemed he was scared of her. Abby didn't let up though, and soon, the young lion's curiosity got the best of him and slowly approached the whiner dog. Once he got closer, he started sniffing her as she wagged her tail. Excited, Abby started running around in the grass and soon found Bone Digger's stash of toys. The lion ran over to protect his things, then Abby licked him on the nose. That's when John knew his plan had worked. After the awkward initial meeting, Bone Digger decided he liked Abby after all. It was incredible to see how this tiny dog was so unafraid of a lion who, although still young, but he could seriously hurt her. John says it all comes down to her cluelessness. Apparently, Dachshunds aren't really aware of their size, so they are not daunted when they come up against bigger animals. And Bone Digger, who was craving a new playmate, found in Abby the perfect companion, and soon it would become a pride. Bone Digger and Abby were moved into a bigger enclosure where Abby got her own bed alongside with her new best friend. Soon the other 3 Dachshunds were introduced to Bone Digger, and they all got along swimmingly. They became part of his pride and he became part of their pack. They run around playing and chasing each other, and they are never apart except when John has to clean their enclosure. Every once in a while, John has to enter the enclosure to trim down the grass and get rid of weeds. The Dachshunds love to attack the weed whacker, so John is forced to take them out. Bone Digger spends the whole time pacing around the fence, crying. As soon as I'm done weeding, I let the weenie dogs back in and he counts his weenie dogs, making sure they're all there. He loves all of them, he says, but Abby's definitely the one he loves the most. I think there's a bigger bond between Abby and Bone Digger than the other 3 weenie dogs, says John. He even bites at the flakes like you see dogs do with each other. It's just crazy what they do. And he feels their relationship is a lesson for all of us. He is a wild animal, but he can be tamed. The weenie dog is a tamed animal, but it can be wild. There's a little bit of each animal in each one of them. So guys, make sure to leave us your comments on this bizarre and adorable relationship. And make sure to leave us a like if you enjoyed the video, and peace out.